Something is happening to weddings. The white gown, the banquet hall, the bouquets toss. Rituals that once felt unshakable are slipping away. Couples are no longer following the old script. Instead, they're rewriting it, sometimes tearing whole pages out and starting fresh. Welcome to Traditional Wedding Ceremonies, the channel where we explore how love is celebrated across the world. Today, we're turning our lens to something different: the rise of the non-traditional wedding. If you're fascinated by how culture bends and reshapes itself, make sure to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. For decades, weddings had a rhythm you could almost set your watch by: the church or hall, the aisle, the first dance, the clinking of glasses. But somewhere along the way, couples started asking themselves, does this really feel like us? That question has changed everything. Now, weddings can look like a cozy brunch at home, a barefoot ceremony on the beach, or a backyard barbecue with fairy lights strung across trees. Some couples trade a cake for cupcakes. Some swap banquet halls for food trucks. Some skip the aisle altogether and meet in the middle. And for many, the white dress is gone too. Brides show up in fiery red, emerald green, patterned silk, or even sleek jumpsuits. Pinterest called it a trend. Vogue called it the non-wedding wedding. But couples themselves? They just call it authentic. Because at the core of this shift is one idea: our wedding should reflect us, not tradition. Take Claire and James in London. Instead of a grand reception, they invited friends to a pub they loved. No speeches, no first dance, just laughter, beer, and fish and chips. Or Maya and Daniel in California, who chose to have only 10 guests at their mountain cabin wedding. They exchanged vows under pine trees, then made pancakes together in the kitchen. A far cry from banquet halls and five-course meals. Another example comes from Aisha and Kareem in Dubai. They decided a ballroom wasn't for them. Instead, they transformed a desert camp into their wedding venue. Guests sat on low cushions, ate under the stars, and listened to oud music late into the night. It looked nothing like their parents' weddings, but everything about it told their story. Even the ceremonies themselves are being rewritten. Some couples ditch officiants and simply speak to one another. Others include friends in the reading of vows. And a growing number are skipping the crowd entirely, opting for elopements, live streams, or private ceremonies, far away from the expectations of family. Why is this happening? Part of it is generational. Younger couples are less tied to institutions, more skeptical of rituals they didn't choose for themselves. Part of it is economic. Traditional weddings can be crushingly expensive. Many couples would rather invest in a home or in travel than in a single lavish day. And part of it is cultural. We live in a world that values personalization. Spotify curates our playlists. Netflix curates our shows. Instagram curates our feeds. So why wouldn't we also curate our weddings? But the biggest reason may be simpler. Couples want weddings that feel real. Think of Ayaka and Kenji in Tokyo. Instead of a shrine or hotel, they married in an art gallery. The walls were covered with paintings they'd collected together over years of dating. Their vows took place surrounded by color and brushstrokes. A wedding that looked nothing like their parents, but entirely like them. These are not outliers. Across the world, couples are doing the same thing, stripping away expectations, rewriting rituals, and asking one question: does this feel like us? And this shift is global. In the US, backyard weddings and micro-weddings exploded during the pandemic, and many never went back to the old way. In Europe, dinner party weddings are replacing banquet halls. In Asia, modern hotel weddings sometimes look more like fashion shows than ceremonies. Even in Africa, young couples in cities are experimenting, opting for court marriages, destination weddings, or smaller ceremonies that still carry personal flair. Pause for a moment and notice the scale of this change. For centuries, weddings were where tradition was most visible. Rituals passed down almost untouched. And now, in just a few decades, couples are rewriting nearly every part. So it's tempting to ask, if traditions are being stripped away, will they survive at all? That's where the story takes a turn. Because even as couples build weddings around themselves, traditions keep slipping back in. Sometimes in small details, sometimes in central roles. Sarah and David broke a glass in a vineyard. Amma and Kojo still held their knocking ceremony after City Hall. A Scottish couple tied tartan around their hands on a Portuguese beach. Nigerian couples in modern gowns still spray money as they dance. Tradition doesn't disappear, it adapts. Why? Because traditions carry weight. They're not just habits, they're memory, identity, continuity. A grandmother's veil passed down is not about fabric, it's about belonging. A blessing in your mother tongue is not about words, it's about roots. A cake cut together is not about dessert, it's about unity. Even when couples create entirely new formats, they often keep fragments of the old. The unveiling, the exchange of rings, a family blessing, and almost always, the vows. Whether whispered in private, spoken before a crowd, or live-streamed to relatives across the ocean, the promise at the center of the wedding remains. That's the twist. Non-traditional weddings may break the script, but they rarely abandon the essence. They bend and reshape, but the heartbeat stays the same. So what does this mean for the future? It means weddings will keep evolving. Guest lists will shrink. Ceremonies will blend cultures. Some may even go fully digital. But traditions, whether big or small, will still find a place. Because while the form of a wedding changes, the function does not. To unite two people, two families, and often two histories. So no, tradition is not disappearing. It is reshaping, bending, and blending. Wearing new clothes, but carrying the same heart. Today's weddings may not look like the ones in old photo albums, but they are still about love. Still about families meeting, still about rituals that remind us we are part of something larger than ourselves. And as long as people keep saying, I do, traditions, quietly, stubbornly, will always find their way back to the wedding. Please like, share, and subscribe, and tell us in the comments which wedding traditions you think will stand the test of time.